Okay, our lecture today is going to be about proportional and non-proportional relationships. We're going to be studying some different sequences and looking at trying to describe patterns. So that's really what sequencing is all about, is trying to find a pattern. So this is your homework for the night, and let's go ahead and get started. So when we're looking to try and solve problems, one of the things we try to do is we try to look for a pattern. Arithmetic sequences were a pattern that we studied, and we could see very easily that by adding the same number each time, we followed the pattern. So we can, for example, look at this sequence. We can see right away that this is not arithmetic because it does not go by a common difference. So the next thing we might do is we look and we see, is there something we can see that causes a pattern in this? Well, if we look at 5 to 10, maybe we can see that this is not just an addition by 5, but maybe multiplied by 2. Look at the next two terms, 10 to 20, multiply by 2. 20 to 40, multiply by 2. We've now found the pattern for the sequence, so we'll just keep going with it. Multiply 40 times 2, we will get 80. Multiply 80 by 2, we'll get 160. Multiply 160 by 2, we'll get 320. So on and so on for however many terms we're asked to find. So the whole idea is see if you can find the pattern and then continue the pattern on. So there's our three patterns, or our three terms after the pattern. Let's look at this one. We have from 5 to negative 10, from negative 10 to 20, and from 20 to 40. This is the same pattern as what we had last time, except we have the sign of the numbers flipping back and forth. So what can we look at for this? We know that it was a multiple of 2, but maybe instead of just a positive 2, what if we multiply by a negative 2? Each time, what does the negative do? A negative sign each time flips the sign of the answer from positive to negative and negative to positive and so on. We go ahead and we follow the term, so we say negative 40 times negative 2 would be positive 80. The next one's going to be 80 times negative 2, which is going to flip our sign to negative 160. And negative 160 times negative 2 is going to flip it back to positive 320. And we write our three terms. So let's find the next three terms in this sequence. 15, 17, 14, 16, 13, ... We can see that when we first look at this pattern, we're not going to see it in an arithmetic sequence. We might think that when we first look, oh, plus 2. But then we notice the very next term does not go plus 2, it goes minus 3. So we've got to look a little harder. Look at the pattern over the entire section. Plus 2, minus 3. Plus 2, minus 3. We've found the only pattern that we can see, so we're going to assume that that's the pattern that this sequence follows. And that's a good assumption because we've looked at all of the different numbers here. So that means that we should add 2 to 13, which gives us 15. We should subtract 3 from 15, which will give us 12. Add 2 to 12, which should give us 14. Then subtract we only go 3 terms, so we'll stop right there. If we were to go another term, we would subtract 3 and get 11. Find the next three terms in this sequence. These are shapes. Notice we don't have to have numbers. A pattern can be shape also. We don't have to only look for our patterns in numbers. So, when we look at this, what do I have? I have a square, then a heart. I have another square, but it's kind of turned at an angle, then a circle, then a square, then a heart. So if I were to look at this pattern, it would be safe to assume that we're going to have a rotated square. Then the next pattern or the next shape should probably be a circle. And the final one should be a square, only on a not rotated square. What about if we use arrows? Notice I have a kind of see-through arrow, then a filled-in arrow, a see-through arrow, filled-in arrow, see-through arrow, filled-in arrow. So shaded and non-shaded. If we look at it, you can also see that the arrows are pointed the opposite directions of each other. What else do we know? Well, we can see that the arrows point at each other, then they rotate counterclockwise 90 degrees, then they come back to their starting position, so that's rotating clockwise 90 degrees. Then they are going to want to rotate back to the vertical position, and the last one is going to be the unshaded arrow facing to the right. Find the next two terms in the sequence. Here we have blank square. We have a triangle pointed to the left. We have a triangle pointed to the left with the line in it. We have a triangle pointed to the right with a line in it. We have a blank square, and we have our triangle. If you look, you can see that the pattern has started itself over after the fourth term. So that means the next two should be the triangles with the lines in them, faced once to the left and then once to the right. In the next thing we did in class, we're talking about three tables. So we're going to look at three patterns, so you need three tables in your notes. The first one, we're going to fill in with these numbers, and we're going to ask you to continue this sequence to fill in the table. So what we will do is we'll treat the x's and the y's as separate sets of numbers, separate lists. So let's look at the x's. They go from 16 to 12 to 8. When we look at that, we can see that they are going down by 4 each time. So let's complete that table. We'll subtract 4 each time, and we'll end up at negative 4. On the other hand, let's look at x, and we can see that, the y's. We can see the y's go up by 3 each time. So we'll just continue that pattern to fill in 12, 15, and 18. All we're doing is we're using the same techniques we've been using, but we're doing it once for the x's and once for the y's. Let's try another one. Look at the x's and the y's. You can see how do the x's change. The x values go down by 6 each time. So if we continue that pattern, we will get 16, 10, and 4. How about the y values? The y values are going down by 8. Down by 8, down by 8 is going to be negative 12, negative 20, negative 28. This is how we fill in this relationship. Remember, the whole idea here is we are trying to relate x and y. We can do that by looking at this pattern of how x is changing and how y is changing, and we still end up getting a relationship between the x value and the y value. Let's look at our last one. We have negative 54, negative 45, negative 36. We can see that the x value is changing by a positive 9 each time. So from negative 36, we're going to go to negative 27, to negative 18, to negative 9. We can see the y value is changing, but it's changing at a level of negative 8. Each time we go -8, you get 23, 15, and 7. So you can see that the pattern here is that every time x changes 9, y changes a -8. Hopefully this helped with what we studied today, and we can work on our, we'll do a little bit of a, sorry, here we go. Here's our homework. So let's go ahead and hopefully this will help, and we will see you in class tomorrow.